Good evening. On behalf of the Shrewsbury-Grafton League of Women Voters, I would like to welcome you all to this candidates forum. My name is Karen Nelson. The League of Women Voters just celebrated its 100th anniversary. It was formed when women obtained the right to vote. The League is a nonpartisan organization. It does not support specific parties or candidates. It does, however, support public issues after studying an issue and going through a process of coming to consensus on that issue. Voter education is a core mission of the League. That is what brings us here tonight. I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Karen Price. Karen has served on the state board of the League and is the current president of the Needham League. Karen, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, League of Women Voters of Grafton, Shrewsbury. I'm going to start by explaining some procedures for the forum, which each candidate received ahead of time.
Okay.
Candidates will each have 3 minutes for an opening statement, 1 minute for a closing statement, and 1.5 minutes to answer each question. And we have 10 questions. A 30-second rebuttal will be allowed at the moderator's discretion, but let's try to limit the rebuttals so we can get through all the issues in time. Opening statements are in ballot order and closing statements will be in reverse. We will alternate who goes first for each question. Questions were submitted in advance from the public and League members. The first question I will ask was sent to the candidates in advance. They haven't seen the remainder. A timekeeper is keeping the time and will alert the candidates with sound when time is up. I will allow the candidates to finish their sentence and then proceed with asking them to stop. Personal references about each other are out of order. Tonight, we welcome the candidates running for the one seat on the school committee. There are 3 candidates running, but only 2 are with us tonight. The third candidate, Andre Kepperstein, did not accept the invitation to participate. Candidates John Wensky and Sanam Zaire are here with us tonight. We'll start with opening statements, starting with Mr. Wensky. Mr. Wensky, you have 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. My name is John Wensky. I'm a lifelong resident of Shrewsbury and a former student of Shrewsbury Public Schools. I've served as an elected member of the school committee for the last 6 years. I'm a graduate of the University of Hartford with a bachelor's degree in communications, and for the last 18 years, I've been employed with Staples Incorporated in Framingham, holding various leadership positions in sales operations and e-commerce. I currently serve as the senior manager of product and account management for P&I Media, which is a Staples-owned company that powers e-commerce applications for retailers. In addition to school committee, I serve as a board member for the Shrewsbury Education Foundation and volunteer my time with Little Colonials Preschool and Colonial TV Studio at Shrewsbury High School. My wife, Melissa, and I are the proud parents of 2 children. Jack is age 19 and a graduate of the SHS class of 2020. And Grace is age 15 and a freshman at SHS. Certainly watching my children's educational journey at every grade level has provided me with a unique perspective as school committee member. I watched my son enter the district as a Little Colonial in 2005, and then my daughter followed a similar path in 2009. They're 2 very different students, but they receive the same high quality education. I've watched the evolution of innovation in the classroom. My son was involved in the one-to-one iPad pilot program in 2012 as a 5th grader. The investment in technology has had significant impact on their learning and the cost savings. Little did we know that 8 years later, we'd be dependent on the same technology to successfully execute remote learning during a pandemic. Throughout my 2 terms, the success and well-being of all Shrewsbury students, educators, and staff have been my first priority. I'm proud of the collaborative work we've accomplished across the district by ensuring our budget always supports all students and staff access to resources, technology, and instructional materials that they need to achieve success. In addition, successfully partnering with the community to build the new Beale School to address elementary space constraints and provide access to free full-day kindergarten for all. Certainly central to this role is advocating for critical funding that'll support the 6,000 students and the 700 plus staff members to ensure they have the tools necessary to succeed. It also requires a strong partnership with central office, town manager, and the Board of Selectmen, and we've made significant progress in the last 3 months. Certainly the pandemic has changed public education as we know it in the last year. It's been an exceptionally challenging year. These challenges are further exacerbated by the pre-COVID fiscal challenges that our town faces. We currently face a $4.8 million budget gap that can only be solved if the town votes to approve an operational override on May 4th. Both the pandemic and certainly the prospect of larger class sizes at all levels require experienced leadership to navigate uncharted educational waters in the town. Our work is just beginning, and that's why I'm running for re-election for Shrewsbury School Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wensky. Next, we'll go to Ms. Zaire.
So my name is Sanam Zaer, and I am running for school committee for the first time. My husband and 3 children moved here a few years ago. I have a 2nd grader at Spring, a kindergartner at Beale, and a 10th grader at Shrewsbury High School. I have always been very passionate about education. I received both my undergraduate degree and my master's degree in education from UMass Amherst and had the opportunity to teach 9th and 10th grade English at Springfield Central High School during my master's program. After graduation, I moved to Houston, where I taught English to English language learners at Houston Community College until the birth of my first child. Since then, I have been a full-time mother, which has given me the time and privilege of participating in all aspects of my children's education, including serving as a room parent, a PTO member, a school council representative, and a parent representative on multiple committees. Education as we know it is changing, and we have a lot to reconcile after an unprecedented year. As an educator, a local advocate, and as the parent of children with varying needs, I am able to look at issues from multiple perspectives that will be important in forging this path forward. Thank you all for your consideration, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for arranging this forum.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the question and answer portion of our forum. The first question, as I said, was sent to the candidates in advance, and we will start with Ms. Zaire. In 2020, Shrewsbury Public Schools participated in an equity audit, an assessment of the diversity, equity, and inclusion within an entity. The audit revealed that while Shrewsbury has a diverse student body, 50% white, 33% Asian, 9% Hispanic, 4% multi-race, and 3% Black, Shrewsbury's staff is 94% white, and its leadership team is 100% white. How do you think the lack of diversity in the leadership team, including senior administrators and principals and staff, impacts the district? Ms. Zaire.
I think this definitely impacts our district on multiple levels. Data and student experience have repeatedly shown that all students, but especially students of color, benefit greatly from a diverse teaching staff. And unfortunately, the same data also shows the negative impact that a lack of teacher diversity has, particularly on Black, Latino, and Indigenous students. This also places an added weight on the few educators of color we do have, which is a main reason why retaining teachers of color is just as difficult as recruiting them. At the leadership level, I think a lack of diversity represents blind spots. As individuals, we only see what we see, no matter how well-intentioned we are. And these blind spots can inadvertently hinder the resolution of or even exasperate inequities within a district. I do think it's important to recognize that this is a self-identified and acknowledged deficit in our district, which is a big deal. There's genuine interest in making not just changes, but investments in this area. And I'm confident that we will see these numbers change over the next few years. I also hope that simply by being a non-white woman running for school committee, I can encourage more to do the same, especially youth. I would love to see some youth on the next ballot.
Thank you. Mr. Wensky.
Certainly, thanks for the question. Certainly, equity audits within any organization, public or private, always allows an opportunity for introspection. I'd say overall, as it relates to the equity audit and its impact, the district is focused on improving the diversification of its workforce. The data shared regarding staff and leadership is really the benchmark for improvement, right? So, the diversity in student demographics has far outpaced the turnover in our long tenured dedicated staff. It's committed to the success of all students. We saw this as a result of the recent Beal redistricting initiative. In 1998, 90% of the student population was white. Fast forward 22 years later, Shrewsbury is now 51% non-white. I think overall, I believe our educators are serving our students very well. If you look at our track record of success, especially amongst non-white students, I've witnessed the successes over the last 3 years, through academic achievements and certainly the co-curricular activities of speech and debate, unified club, robotics, right down the list, very diverse successes that we've seen in the schools. And our students are very well served and supported. And the success is evident in the data and the student achievements.
Thank you. And now we'll go on to the next question, and Mr. Wensky, will start with you. It is unusual to have this many candidates running for school committee and have a new Board of Selectmen and town moderator open. What motivated and gave you incentive to run for school committee and not Board of Selectmen? Is there a particular issue that motivates you to serve on the school committee?
Thank you so much for that question. Yeah, back in 2014, I was really inspired by the way the town rallied on the operational override, and certainly wanted to inquire about running for school committee. I have a passion for schools. My mom certainly volunteered at Beal School for close to 20 years, and then became a school nurse for 20 years. I also saw the work that my wife did as PTO president at Patton School for 10 years, and I really wanted to certainly serve my hometown, having gone through the school system myself and now raising my family here. I'm very fortunate to do so. So I wanted to be sure that we protected the gains from 2014 from that override to ensure that we have all the necessary resources available to all students. So that's really what led me here. Certainly wanted to check with the people on the board to ensure I could commit the time that's necessary to this role. And it's been a very rewarding experience for me to serve my hometown in this role. And that's why I'm here. Thank you.
I just want to mention, if any of the candidates ever need me to reread the question, please don't hesitate to ask. So now we'll go on to Ms. Zaire.
So the reason I'm running for school committee instead of Board of Selectmen is because I have a background in education, and it's something I care about a lot, and I'm very involved in the schools on multiple levels. I am also interested in what goes on in the town. I've led and participated in multiple advocacy efforts around town. And I will still continue to do those things. I am interested in those things, but in terms of where I'd like to focus my time, I'm really interested in the work of the school committee. I see it as an advocacy role for students, and I see myself as an advocate for students. So that's the reason that I'm here. I was also partially inspired by the equity audit, the statistics that you just read. If I'm elected or not, I do hope that this is a shift in the demographic of people that run for office, because it hasn't been a very diverse group of candidates since I've lived here. So that was another goal of mine.
Thank you. And we'll go for you again with the next question. What do you see as the major issue or issues facing the school system?
Well, right now, I think a huge issue is the budget shortfall. I'd really like to see the Prop 2.5 override pass. I think that it's been pretty amazing how little of an impact we've felt, considering all of the issues going on. I watch the school committee meeting and I see all these budget shortfalls, but really my kids have been mostly happy and thriving and not really noticing. So that's been really amazing. But now we're in an unprecedented year and there's a lot of learning loss. And we're really going to have to reconcile that moving forward. So that is I think that's a big issue. I think another issue is again, going back to the equity audit, since this was an unprecedented year, a lot of these inequities that exist in the district will be exacerbated. And I think that it's important to really put targeted strategies in place to address these issues as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wensky, same question.
Yes, certainly. So two things. I think, budget is a critical part of everything we do, right? And kind of staring at a $4.8 million budget gap as we head into next year is very unsettling. It certainly keeps me up at night to think about, what could result in larger class sizes. Certainly our inability to open the new Beal School as promised and as planned, which was going to help, mitigate the space needs for the elementary level. So I think funding is a critical piece to everything we do. It really dictates the resources that we can provide to students. But certainly, yes, the last year has been significantly challenging for all families and all students. Learning remotely for close to a year. It's the unknowns that I think are really going to be our challenge moving forward. Where are the learning gaps? Where are the critical needs, not only educational, but mental health needs as well, and not just for students, but also for staff as well. So there's a lot of work ahead of us. If we're fortunate enough to pass the override, that'll solve maybe some of the problems, but there are several unknowns as a result of the last year through remote learning that we need to be prepared for.
Thank you. And Mr. Wensky, we'll start with you on the next question. What are your thoughts on the proposed tax override to fund the school system? If you have any additional thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's on the brain, certainly. So yeah, I think, certainly the partnership that we've established with the Board of Selectmen and school committee, has really been significant over the last 3 months in particular. I think prior, to this year, I think override was kind of a taboo subject, right? I remember, the successes that we had after the 2014 override. But, as we were chipping away at the gains and having to reduce programming as a result of lack of funding, we knew that we needed to, advocate for another override. It was just, getting consensus. And, I think what has been put in place right now as the framework for this operational override, should it pass, is groundbreaking. We're looking ahead to the future, not only for the school budget, but for all town services, planning 4 years ahead and setting parameters for what our commitment is to the town. So I think, the framework that's in place between school committee and Board of Selectmen is a game changer, and it will allow this town to solve the structural deficit that's been known prior to COVID. So definitely feel like this is a huge step forward.
Thank you. And same question for you, Ms. Zaire.
So I also fully support a Prop 2.5 override, and I think it's long overdue. I really appreciate the efforts of all our current town leaders, not just for coming up with a longer term solution, but for their local advocacy with this issue. Adding to what Mr. Winsky said, I really like that it's not just addressing the issues in the school, it's also addressing issues in the town. One of those that I'd like to highlight that doesn't have to do with the schools, but a group of us had spoken with the police chief a little while ago, and he had talked about ways that he'd like to change the police department and how policing is done locally, including bringing, body cameras and doing some extra trainings. And, this extra funding won't just benefit the schools, it'll benefit the whole town. I think that answers the question.
So, thank you. And we'll continue with you for the next question. How would you determine your budget priorities?
In general, I would say that my priorities personally will always be the most vulnerable students in the district. In general, I believe that this should be the starting point where we, make sure that these students are all set. I think that sometimes, and I'm not saying that this is what's happening in Shrewsbury, but I think that sometimes, we're seeing this with, some of the sweeping mandates. Sometimes the focus is on equality instead of equity. And I think that if we are going to shift to equity, we really do need to put the most vulnerable kids at the forefront. So in terms of the budget, I would make sure that, English language learners are not touched. That's the special education department, that they're all set, because these are students that, need a little bit of extra support. And I think that's really important. In terms of the rest, I don't necessarily view the role of a school committee member as someone who would be necessarily intervening in whatever district leaders are deciding. And I think district leaders have been doing a really good job, kind of prioritizing where these budget cuts are made and how to minimize the impact on the student body at large. But just to reiterate, one priority of mine would be focusing on the most vulnerable students and really advocating for them.
Thank you. Mr. Wensky.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. Certainly, we need to look at, the success of all students. I think, and as school committee member and elected member, I'm one of essentially 5 voices on the committee. So, to collaborate with them to take a look at, what we're facing. We know the simple recommendation that Dr. Sawyer put out there in terms of budget was to carry forward what we have today in terms of programming and resources, and then open the new Beale School. We know that we had to reduce our staff by 30 full-time employees coming into this year. So what can we do to bring back, some of those resources to help, the critical needs of all students, right? So, I certainly think mental health is a really critical focus. So around guidance counseling, and certainly looking at where the needs are the greatest across all students. So, I'm sure there are, like I mentioned previously, there are a lot of unknowns coming out of the post-pandemic public education realm. And, we're just now going back into the school buildings. So what does that learning regression look like, and where are the needs greatest? I think we need to evaluate that as the years progress to understand where our needs are and where our priorities are.
Great, thank you. And now sticking with you for the next question. Statistically, 1/3 of college students do not graduate. What are your thoughts about providing more vocational and work experience options to help prepare students who take a gap year or do not graduate from college?
Yes, so definitely an important thing. I think vocational educational opportunities are something that we need to open up more of. It certainly does come at a cost to the district, but it's an investment we definitely need to make, and we've sought certainly what we can provide to our students in Shrewsbury for vocational opportunity, because college is not a one-size-fits-all thing. Certainly not from when I was growing up. We need to provide more opportunities for vocational exposure to our students, just to expose them to other careers that maybe they are otherwise not familiar with. We're not able to provide the shops that we had decades ago. So really the outlet for vocational trades is to provide and open up more opportunities through vocational schools. It is a challenge. There's quite a wait list out there for those opportunities, but we certainly I know central office is looking at what's available to all Shrewsbury students if they so choose to pursue that.
Thank you. Ms. Zaer?
I agree with a lot of what Mr. Wensky said. I think that would be a really great resource in the district. Adding to what he said, I think one thing that I would love to see us do more in schools is try to help children identify their interests earlier on. Sometimes I think that college becomes the place to do that. And that's why a lot of college students don't graduate, because, you get to college, and that happened to me too. I went to college in freshman year as a computer science major, and then I bounced to education, and I dabbled in law for a little bit, and I think in your K through 12 education, you're really starting to develop who you are, what your strengths are. And I think if you're able to, if you can develop that earlier on and decide, I don't even want to go to college. I want to go to a trade school. I want to learn this. I have this skill. I think that that's really important, and that would save a lot of kids a lot of time and a lot of money before getting trapped in a lot of student debts, doing something that maybe they didn't want to do in the first place.
Okay, great, thank you. And we're going to stay with you for the next question. What are your thoughts on standardized testing and the time the district and teachers spend preparing for it?
I am definitely against MCAS testing for this year. And this is something I have been advocating for and will continue to advocate for at the state level. I do understand that this is a standardized test we've used for years and that it could serve as an important data point for learning loss. But I think the cons outweigh the pros, especially this year. This would add unnecessary stress on students, on parents, and on teachers to tell us information that we already know. And it will take a lot of valuable time away from direct instruction. Outside of the pandemic, I am also generally against standardized tests. I do understand the importance of data, but I believe a diverse group of education leaders, much smarter than me, can sit down and come up with a suitable and more equitable alternative. I just think we really haven't been willing to sit down and have that conversation. Thank you.
Mr. Wensky.
Yes, certainly, with all the challenges of the pandemic, I was happy to see the Department of Education Commissioner proposing and, certainly relieving that 10th grade graduation requirement under the circumstances. Certainly I see the stresses that come with the MCAS through my daughter, and just really, uptight about taking the test. I saw it with my son as well. I do think that, we need to have a broader conversation about it. Certainly the challenges around MCAS is that there's been so many different iterations over the years in Massachusetts of this high stakes test, and there's some inconsistencies. But I think one of the reasons why Massachusetts public schools are held in such high regard nationwide is because we do have these higher standards, and we do have the accountability involved to make our students successful. So I do agree. I think there's a broader conversation that needs to be had on high stakes testing and its impact on all school communities.
Thank you. And Mr. Wensky, what issues do you believe our town needs to address in its academic program and offerings? What changes would you recommend?
I would certainly, I think we always need to look at, diversity within our education and make sure that, we expose, all students to, the opinions that, everyone holds and to, agree to disagree, certainly through social and emotional learning. We've seen a lot of really good progress in that front. And I think that approach should continue to, exchange ideas, to have conversations amongst the groups within each of the classes, to share, perspectives, and to, advocate for listening and having, interpersonal communication. I think a lot of times too, we're faced with, too much screen time with our children, and we need to have them engage in conversation more, talk to each other as opposed to texting and messaging, So I think just more encouragement around interpersonal communication and diversity of opinions, I think is a very important thing that we need to, continue to address.
Thank you. Ms. Zaire.
I think I mentioned this earlier, but I don't necessarily view it as the role of a school committee member to make or even necessarily suggest changes in the district. I view this as an advocacy role, and what I bring to the advocacy table are diverse perspectives that are sometimes missing from our conversations as a district. These are not perspectives that should only be solicited in conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but ones that I believe should be considered in every decision that is made. I found myself on committees sometimes being the only voice or the only person saying something different than the majority. And I think that, I think we need more of that. I think we need more different opinions at the table, more perspectives of different people around the community. And in terms of bringing changes, I think that naturally brings changes once you bring new voices to the table.
Could I have a 30-second rebuttal?
Sure.
Just really quickly, I just want to be clear on my statement as well. I mean, and certainly in this role as a school committee member, as I mentioned, you're one of 5 voices. It is definitely an advocacy role for schools. It is not certainly our place to intervene in the curriculum that's being made. Certainly, we make recommendations. There's oversight, but yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, this role is advocacy first. Okay.
Ms. Zaire, do you want to add to that? You can have another 30 seconds. Okay, thank you.
Almost set.
Okay, so you get the next question. What should our schools do to better prepare students as citizens and voters, future voters?
So I'm actually not, I'm not too familiar with what is currently done when students turn 18. I'm not sure if there's a strong push for them to register for voters or get them involved. I'm assuming there's not that strong of a push because I'm not seeing any, 18, 19-year-olds running for local office or joining town meeting. There are certainly some, but I don't know if there's a, push from the actual school to do so. I think that would be really important, talking about as seniors, especially getting them registered to vote, maybe creating programs where they can see how local government works and showing them how it, I myself as a 37-year-old woman, I had no idea what a town meeting was. I really had to dive in and figure that out. It still doesn't make entirely too much sense to me. So I can't imagine that an 18-year-old is like, yes, this is something I want to be a part of. So I think that's a great starting place. And I think in addition, we could maybe target specific groups as well. Like, for example, different diverse student union groups and, getting them really involved and trying to encourage them to run for local office and, join this giant town meeting that we have locally. But I think that'd be a great starting place to get people involved. I also generally think our websites are a little outdated. So I know that's probably a funding issue, but it's really hard to, when you're looking for something, you have to watch, a 1-hour meeting in a just pile of paperwork to go and find it. So I think you would have a lot more active citizens if you had something that you can, go in and type in a search bar exactly what you're looking for.
Okay.
But I imagine that's something that would come with money.
Thank you. Mr. Wensky?
Yeah, no, great question. I think, certainly in all of our schools, there's student organizations certainly advocating for students to get involved in those clubs and organizations, to get them started in learning how to collaborate as a group and making sure everybody has a voice and understands the importance of that. Participating in your own school community activities. I know we know in the Shrewsbury High School in particular, they have what is, I guess, like a town meeting, but amongst the students, and they certainly vote on certain things. So, making sure that advocating for an understanding of civics and certainly engagement in any of the school communities that you participate in as students, I think is a good place to start. In terms of their future engagement in maybe future Shrewsbury Town Meeting members. So.
Thank you.
I don't have a rebuttal, just a response.
Okay.
Yeah, I had actually reached out to the school council, and I was trying to collaborate with them on submitting. I had recently submitted a proposal to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, and I was trying to get some of the students involved. And they basically referred me to town meeting. So there was, they are very involved, but I do think there needs to be more collaboration between the actual, district leaders and the school leaders. And I'd love to see, programs or internships or something along those lines to get those students out of the school and being heard at the town level.
Thank you. Mr. Wensky, would you like an additional 30 seconds?
No, thank you.
Okay. This is our last question. And we'll start with Mr. Wensky prior to closing statements. How can the school committee be accessible to the community and to community groups? I assume they mean more accessible.
More accessible. Yeah, no, I mean, I think, certainly we are open to any questions or comments through email. We also have public participation at every single meeting. So certainly if somebody wants to express their views on something that's happening within the schools, there is an outlet for that. So certainly advocate for it. We don't see enough participation. I think it's important that people know that they have a platform, certainly to come to us and explain anything that's of concern, or something that they want to express at public participation. But email is certainly an important thing, and that any of us are available. Our information is on the website as well. Certainly, they could reach out to us anytime if they have any questions or concerns.
Thank you. And Ms. Zaire.
I'd like to, in addition to those things, I'd like to see school committee members more involved on social media. I know that there's a lot of restrictions with that, but I think that that's helpful because a lot of the community does engage on social media. And I know that there's a Board of Selectmen member that really engages with the public, and I've learned a lot from her. And I think that, I'd like to see school committee members doing that also, really putting themselves out there. In terms of myself personally, I think I'm very accessible. I kind of joke around about how my front lawn is a public park because I constantly have people over. We just, the other day we had like 20 kids in masks just running around. I love meeting new people and talking with them. And somehow I get roped into every single organization around me. So I'm just all over the place in general. I'm coaching 2 soccer teams. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, I think in general, just being out in the community and talking with people, just having a diverse network, I think that makes me personally accessible to a very wide range of Shrewsbury residents. But in terms of the committee itself, yeah, social media, I think that would be a great addition, or I don't know. I know there's rules against it, but I'd just love to see more of that.
Just a quick rebuttal on that.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I know one of the first things I learned coming onto the committee was, because I'm big on social media. I agree with Sanam with regards to the engagement there. It's even more so than, say, our meetings, right? But there are, open meeting law, violations that could be, crossed if we engage in social media. That's why we tend to stay away from it unless there's something that we absolutely need to, just clarify in terms of the information that's out there. I wish it was different, certainly, because I see a lot more engagement on social media and as a forum just to be available to the public. So we have to be really careful on that one.
Ms. Zaire, would you like 30 seconds?
I would, yeah. My sister actually, she lives in Chestnut Hill, and she tells me all the time that school committee members are very active online and providing a lot of information in local forums. So I'm not sure if that's just a current cultural decision on school committee or if it's an actual rule, but that's certainly something that if I'm on school committee, I would question and ask, because I think that's really important for community engagement.
Thank you, candidates. That concludes our questions. Thank you so much for staying within the time limits. And now we'll move on to closing statements. Closing statements are in reverse order of opening statements. You have 1 minute each, and we'll start with Ms. Zaire.
I didn't actually prepare a formal closing statement, but I just want to say thank you for organizing this. And I welcome anyone to just reach out and chat and ask any questions or just come and hang out on my lawn. I'm pretty open, and I imagine my contact information will be available with the link to this video. So please reach out anytime with any questions.
Thank you. And Mr. Wensky?
Yes, thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum. I'd also like to thank Ms. Zaire for interest in Shrewsbury Public Schools and her willingness to make the commitment of time and energy that the role requires to serve our community in this impactful role. Certainly, I'm proud of the strong working relationships I've established with my colleagues, district leadership, principals, faculty, and staff. I've always been a strong advocate for the critical funding that our district demands. We're the 28th largest out of 316 school districts in the state. Our 700 plus dedicated staff, 6,000 plus students, that enter our schools daily across 4,000 families are really important to our school community. And now more than ever, we need to be sure that we have the necessary funding and resources to tackle the challenges that we have ahead. And certainly preparing for a post-pandemic return to school has many unknowns. Work is just starting on this, and that's why I'm running for re-election. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, both of you. And I'd like to thank the candidates for respecting the process and for respecting each other. It's been a pleasure joining you tonight. The election is Tuesday, May 4th. Thank you and good night.